Hello and welcome to the Venus Flytrap Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stephen Paul Edwards, and this is where we talk about toxic relationships. Why do we have them? If we're in them, how do we get out of them, right? And how do we not go back into them again, right? So, first of all, these toxic relationships are patterns. They're showing you patterns that you have created, usually in your childhood, patterns of behavior, patterns of beliefs, and then they repeat in all areas of your life. So, look, everything is a relationship. The relationship with your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your partner, your significant other, whatever you want to call that. But it doesn't end there. Everything is a relationship. You have a relationship with money. Some people say, why can I never make money? Because of the patterns that you created in your childhood, usually in your childhood, not always, but usually. And then they are reflected in your life throughout your life until when? Until you take a look at yourself, until you take a look at those patterns, until you take a look at your childhood. And then once you start to recognize that these toxic relationships, whether it's money, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your career, whether it's your friends, whether it's your coworkers, or of course your family, that's a juicy one, isn't it? They're happening because of these patterns that were created long ago that you're not aware of. And these beliefs that you've created were passed down to you, were created for you by your friends, by your parents, usually your caretakers, by your social situation, your ethnicity, your religion, all these things, your teachers at school, all these things create beliefs that you're not even aware of now. We call them transparent beliefs. You can't even see them. You're not even aware of them. That's why it's so difficult to work on yourself. So these beliefs, these patterns of behaviors are repeating themselves over and over again until you deal with them. And I always say to people, listen, prevention is much better than cure. Prevention before the cure. So the sooner you start looking at these things, heal these, what you might call wounds from these traumas that happened in your childhood and your early formative years, the sooner you can have a healthy relationship. Because if you bring this baggage into a relationship, how can you possibly have a healthy relationship? Because you're not healthy, right? So we're going to look about how we can get you where you need to be to attract the person that you want to share your life with. Because until you have that vibration, that frequency, it's not going to happen. You've heard it before. You've got to be the person you want to attract in order to attract them. That frequency, that vibration has to be within you first. Okay, so what I can guarantee you is this. When you come here, you come to these podcasts, they are going to be entertaining. We're going to have fun. I'm going to laugh at myself, and I'm probably going to laugh at you. Get over it, right? They're going to be entertaining. They're going to be enlightening. You're going to learn things you did not know before that are going to change the way you think. And if we can change the way you think, it's going to change the words you use. If we can change the words you use, we can change your actions and behavior. And that's the secret to transformation. Okay, thoughts, words, and deeds. Those are the three keys that we've got to work on to get where you want to be, to have the life, relationships, the finances that you truly deserve. So let's get started.
A tailored suit in a London rain. He built an empire to mask the pain. A self-made man with a heart and heart, watching the world from a place apart. Then she walked in like a sudden blade in the midnight heat where the shadows played. A fallen heiress with a rebel soul, ready to take back all control. She lived by no rules but her own desire, wrapping his life in a ring of fire. An international ghost of a golden age, stepping back onto the center stage. Oh, the Venus flytrap.
You know, when I went through this experience, it's like you can't explain it to people, right? How many of you can relate to that? Probably a lot of you, right? You go through these crazy circumstances, situations, and people say, how'd you get into that? Why did you go back? Why did you do that? And really, you don't have a rational, reasonable explanation. You're like, I don't know. I just did. Leave me alone, right? So And then people probably, sometimes they give up saying anything, right? Because they think he's never going to listen to me anyway. And then you don't want to say anything because people are going to tell you you're crazy. And so you can start to feel alone, right? That you're in this on your own and you don't really have a support network around you. I'm not saying that for everybody in every circumstance, but it happens a lot. So one of the other reasons I wrote the book is so that people don't feel alone. And people have said to me, man, I was in that same place. I felt the same way. Can't say I was that crazy, but I felt the same way. I felt like I was on my own. Nobody understood. And to be honest, I didn't even understand. I was like, how is this happening, right? It doesn't make any sense because when we get into these kind of relationships, they're not meant to make sense. They're just meant to draw you in so you can go through the experiences you need to go through to learn the life lessons you need to take your life to the next level or take you closer to being who you really are. It doesn't make any rational sense. And there's a part of you that knows this can't last forever. You know that. But you're going to say, or sometimes you might say, listen, I know it's not going to last forever, but I'm having a good time while we're doing this, right? So here I am in this relationship with this, this former supermodel who's stunning, right? I mean, she walks in a room and everybody just turns their head, right? And you're just taken away by her beauty. I mean, I used to think almost she's so beautiful, it makes you want to cry. It's just all this beauty, right? So I would think to myself, well, look, I got two choices here. I could break up with her, go back to a boring life, or I could stay with this former supermodel, have a blast, put up with some downers, right? Some really tough situations, the madness and mayhem, and have blast. And so I decided to live a boring life. I'm kidding. I just was no freaking choice there. Obviously, I'm going to stay with it, right? So I stayed with it until it wasn't worth it anymore, right? That I was burned out, that I got to the point where I was exhausted mentally, emotionally, physically, financially, everything. She took me down, right? But that's where then I could really get the lessons. She was never, as men generally, and I hate to generalize, which is always a good indication that I'm probably generalized, right? Men, of my age or my generation, I don't know how it is now, but we were taught, you got to save the damsel in distress, right? You got to rescue her, then you got to save her, then you got to fix her, and then she'll love me, right? Which absolutely makes no sense, right? It's nonsense, right? But that's what you believe. So you're going around all the time and you find a woman that's broke, what you think is broken, right? Oh, I'll rescue her, then I can fix her, and then I can save her, right? Well, sometimes you can't. And, when you're in the personal development arena and you're working in coaching, you can easily, but you can adopt the belief that everybody's fixable. I can fix anybody. Well, no, you can't. And you can't fix Tomas, right? She ain't going to be fixed. She doesn't want to be fixed, It's like I tried so hard to get into addiction programs and rehab. Not interested. Not a million years. You know why? Because what I learned is that she does not want to solve the addiction. Why? Because when she's on the drugs, when she's having sex, when she's drinking alcohol, she's not in this reality. She's in a different reality, and she cannot live in this reality. It's too painful for her, right? So she would rather die than not have a drugs, not have a sex, and not. She would literally rather die, right? So when you're faced with someone like that, what can you? You're never going to fix her, right? You're never going to get her to the point where she's going to. Not that she was normal anyway, but anyway, even anywhere near a normal life, right? So, and I had to come to terms with that because at first I'm trying to save her, fix her, whatever it is, rescue, save, and fix, right? Never going to happen. And so, because she was in a mental institution at such an early age, and she was, she didn't go and knock on the door and said, "Can I come in?" She got taken away, as did I, right? She couldn't get out. So she was so afraid of ever having to go back there again. What does that mean? It means she was never going to do therapy.
Ever again.
Because, she went to therapy, they could identify what the problem was. She did not, and if they did that, she could be taken back to the mental institution. So she was terrified of going to therapy. So the actual, ultimately, what we found out is she had a mental disease, right? I was making a joke about it. It's not funny. She had a mental disease that's incurable, right? And we get to that in the book. So I'm not going to do a spoiler on that. And so the only way there was any hope of her being able to live even close to a normal life would be having therapy at least 3 times a week, minimum. And even then, it would be a challenge, and it'd be difficult for anyone to live with. So she's never going to go to therapy under any circumstances. So you have no chance. And my therapist eventually said to me, "Look, Stephen, you got to make a choice here. You're losing everything, and you're even losing your mind. You are literally going insane, right?
Yeah.
So you got to make a choice. If you want to stay with her, then you've got to take the consequences, and they're going to be severe, right? Or you can let her go, and you can get your sanity back and move on with your life. Because if she's not going to go to therapy, she doesn't love you enough." Yeah, that's like a dagger in your heart, right?
Yeah.
Because she couldn't live without those things because it was too painful.
Yeah, that was her coping mechanism.
Yeah, it's a coping mechanism. Reality is too painful without it. So, and it talks about in the book how she's terrified of abandonment at a level that most people could never imagine. We all suffer from fear of abandonment. But the level she experienced that, it was intense pain, right? Intense. And so the only way she could feel was when she was taking drugs, or she was in pain, because pain would take her out of reality. I always wondered, sometimes women like pain, right? They like pain. She's not the only one, right? And I go, well, what's that about? And she explained it to me. She said, look, when there is pain, you feel alive. You can literally feel, right? Without that, I can't feel anything. Shit, that's intense, right? So it just shows you there's just so many reasons for different things that we can't understand, right?
Yeah.
So, but I wasn't going to save her, that's for sure. And so that was a big awakening for me, and then that helps my counseling, because I go, I'm not fixed on the idea that I can't help everybody. You know what I mean? There are going to be some people that are never going to be helped, and I have to accept that. I can't fix everybody. Most people, I'm just kidding. But I mean, there's a lot of people I can help. I literally cannot fix anybody, just to be clear, right? But I can give them tools, so people might, someone might say, I want to build a house. You go, okay, how are you going to build it? Well, I'm strong, right? I can chop wood. I can bring the water. I could do it myself. And you go, okay, well, good luck with that. Let's see how that turns out, right?
Yeah.
How much expertise do you have in it? I don't have any expertise, but I'm strong. Okay, let me know how that works out. And so they're going to try and build that house on their own. How well do you think that's going to go? Probably not well. If they're a builder, they're going to be fine. Most people aren't a builder, right? They don't understand the rules of building and all the practicality. So you said to them, listen, what if I could give you tools to build a house and give you help? So you know how to build a strong foundation, so that when the wind blows, your house doesn't get blown over, right? Or it rains, it's going to be protected. So build a strong foundation and make sure that it's capable of dealing with all the weather. And I give you tools to do that. I give you a saw, I give you a hammer, some nails, whatever you need. Would you like that? And some people go, no, I'm fine. Thank you very much. And so they keep going on their own, right? But most people would agree that with some tools, it's going to be easier to build that house. And that house is going to be a house you're going to live in for the rest of your life. And so you want it to be built well. You need to be able to cope with the difficult times, the hard times, and the challenges that you're going to go through. Right? And so that's all I can do is help them build the home the way they want it to be, with the jacuzzi and the pool and the whole thing, so that they're happy to live in that home, right? When you come home, they're happy to be coming home. Right?
Yeah.
And the thing about it is this: look, wherever you go, there you are. What does that mean? Well, first of all, you have to accept. Well, you don't have to do anything, but if you're really going to heal and you're really going to grow, then you need to accept that you're creating all of it. And you go, that doesn't make any sense. Why would I create this or why would I create that? Well, so that you see the reflection. So you see your reflection in it all. And then if you don't like what you see, what can you do?
You can rebuild it.
Yeah, you can move to another town, right? I'm kidding. Because wherever you go, you're going to create the next town you go to, right? So you can make some changes so that you're happy with the reflection, right?
Yeah.
And most of these changes are very small, but we can't see that we need to make those changes. You need someone to see it from the outside.
Yeah.
Objectively, because we can't see subjectively. And so that's one of the things I've also learned is you can't do it on your own. You need help. Not easy sometimes, accept. And, again, I don't want to generalize. So now you know what I'm going to do. Most men don't want to go to therapy because they have been told it's weakness, right?
Yeah.
I don't need therapy. I'm strong. I can get through this. Okay. Well, good luck with that, right? So we all need therapy. I talk about in the book is we're all on a spectrum of insanity, right?
Yeah.
I'm not insane. Yes, you are. What do you mean by that? Who are you to call me insane? I'm a human being. And I know that to live in this world, you have to be insane because we live in an insane world. The things we do, we destroy our environment. We kill each other with weapons. I mean, who the freak was insanity? Who in their right mind would blow up their planet, destroy their environment, kill each other, and do other things that are equally insane? It would never happen, right? We have to be insane to live in this world. So now we've established you're insane. So then it depends on what spectrum of insanity you live in, right? So I'm talking about breadth, right? I was just talking to someone about that. The breadth of it, right? But the further you go to extremes, what? The more likely you are to end up in an asylum. No, I'm kidding. The more you...
I'm just going to take that seriously.
The more you go on the spectrum, the more experiences you have, the more understanding of human nature, right? Of the human condition you understand. The more you understand that if someone has, what I was diagnosed with back then was manic depression or bipolar, it's just a condition. It's just another place on the spectrum. Yes, they have highs. Yes, they have lows. Yes, they can be impossible, but they can also be a lot of fun. So maybe that's someone you might want to contemplate. Some people go, I don't want that much fun. That's a little bit wild for me, right? So, okay, then don't be with someone that has that condition, right?
Yeah.
So when people make an application out to be with you, you have them fill it out and you ask them, do you have any mental illnesses that I should be aware of, right? Simple. How hard could that be, right? And of course, anybody who has a serious mental condition will willingly and openly answer that question truthfully. Mm-hmm. Probably not, but there will be signs, right? As there were signs with Tamaz, pretty big signs, right? It was pretty obvious from early on that she was crazy. Now, let me deal with that because I know a bunch of women just got really pissed off when I said that because they're going to say, oh, men always says it's the woman who's crazy. It's just bullshit. It's just because we're more in touch with our emotions than men. So they just don't understand it. No, she's fucking crazy, period, right? End of story. She was fucking crazy. She was off the chain crazy. But I like crazy, right?
Yeah.
At the beginning of the book, it's exciting, right? So at the beginning of the book, I said, I got this girl and I was constantly thinking how I could hang on to this crazy bitch. And she was thinking how long she could hang on to me, another crazy bitch, right? So we were both mirrors of each other, right? Wherever that goes, we were going to go until we couldn't anymore. And like I said, in the end, and I don't want to do a spoiler on it because it's a pretty interesting, entertaining, and insane story of how we actually got to that realization. But my point of all this, if there is one, is that I learned so much on my journey, right? She gave me a freedom I'd never experienced before because she was so authentic, just being herself, right? I mean, she would walk around like she owned the world. And she did. She just got whatever she wanted, right? Because she was raised in a very wealthy family, right? So she got whatever she wanted. She was used to getting whatever she wanted. So now, because she was just used to that, She just assumed she was going to get it. There was no questions asked. And just because she had that belief, she would get it. You know, I tell a story about going to a nightclub, right? And how she just owned the place. The moment we got there, arriving a Rolls Royce, and she just walks in. She doesn't ask anybody, excuse me, is this the right way in? Should I go in here? She just walked right in, right? And everybody just moved out of her way, right? 6'5", you know, absolutely stunning, just walked in. And everyone was like, well, obviously she's supposed to be here, right? I mean, I'm not going to ask her if she's got a ticket. Are you? I'm going to fuck me.
That's her world, yeah.
Right? So she walks in there. And she owns the place. She could get anything, because that was her world. And I mean anything. You want a guy? You want a girl? No problem. I'll get it for you in seconds. Which she did, right? And there's even a story in the book about that. You know, Jerry's in there and he's looking around at all the girls. He's nervous, right? And so she says to him, is there a girl you like? And he goes, well, you know, that waitress over there is pretty nice. Yeah, she goes over and gets the freaking waitress, comes over, and he's like there you are. There you go. What the fuck? You know? And other situations where she got in hot water with me, and I'd leave her somewhere and then drive away. I go back to where I was, and before I got back, she was already there because she got some guy to put her in his car and drive her back there. How the fuck did you pull that off? You got back here before I did, and I left before you did.
Yeah.
Crazy. Who knows? She was amazing, incredibly powerful. But she taught me so much as well. She taught me how to be authentic.
Mm-hmm.
She taught me that, you know, she would say, listen, this is what you get. This is me. Take it or leave it, right? And I'm like, she's so freaking cocky, right? But she's right, you know? She's not going to put on a show or a persona to please anybody, right? Yeah. Cool. And she also could be vulnerable. Where she would tell me about the people don't normally. She was just so authentic, and that drew me as well, because the universe was saying, "This is a reflection of you. You can be this way too." Yeah. But what is she bringing to the table? She's bringing vulnerability. She's prepared to be vulnerable. So we would talk for hours and hours playing backgammon, and she would talk to me until I fell asleep so she could win. So anyway, playing backgammon, or she would distract me, but I'd be like, holy shit, what did she talk about? And then I wouldn't be watching, and she'd be like, oh, we've won 4 games. So she was very strategic. And she got me to think about things in different ways, right? She's very intelligent, super smart. Dad, a genius, so she got those genes. And we would talk about things, and she would tell me stories that were stories about herself and her childhood and her life that most people would keep a secret, right? But by being vulnerable and talking about those things, it built a trust between us, right? Yeah. Relationships are built on trust and vulnerability. You've got to be prepared to trust the person with your darkest secrets and things that other people don't know and never should know, right? And that builds trust, and you have to be vulnerable to do that. And so that was one of the reasons I wrote the book, to talk about a lot of the things that I'd been ashamed of in my life. Never told anybody, right? Never told people I've been in a mental institution. Got what was it called? ECT, electric convulsive therapy, right? Yeah. I mean, who wants to go around telling people, hey, do you know, by the way, I had an ECT when I was a kid. What do you think about that? Yeah. Don't call me, right? So, and you're not going to tell your girlfriend that, right? And then if you go for a job and they have it on the application form, right? Have you ever had mental illness? What am I going to put? What am I going to put? Yeah. What was the point in going to fill out the application if you put yeah, right? You ain't going to get the job, right? So I go, no. And then feel guilty about it, right? Because it really isn't fair. They're hiring a crazy person that has no idea, right? Yeah. But it's a stupid question to put on an application form. No one's going to say yes, right? You know, you should be locked up if you say yes. Stupid, right? And then other things that happened to me, you know, things that were humiliating as a kid, which I go into in the book. And so I just brought them all out and I put them all in the book. It's right there, you know. But that gave me a freedom I never had before. Because now, for the first time since I was a kid, I wasn't trying to hide anything. I wasn't trying to hide something that I mean, I'm not saying I went around every day trying to hide it, but there were things that I never talked about that I knew I'd never talked about. I knew it happened to me. I knew I was ashamed of, right? And then once I put it out, I wasn't. And it took courage to do that, no question, right? And I do take credit for that. There's not a lot else in the book to take credit for anyway. So, but I did do that, and it was scary, even in my mid-50s, it was scary because you don't know where that's going to fall, what the consequences are going to be. And it's just something you've never told people about. So you're still carrying fear around it, right? So, but I did do that. But the freedom it gave me it was a burden off my back.
Yeah.
I don't have to be afraid about that anymore. I don't have to worry about it. I mean, I put it out there. Not only did I put it out there, I put it in a book, right? So, but what other things could people know about me that could be worse? There's nothing left, right? So now I can be me. Now I can be me. Now I can talk about that, and I can laugh about it, right? I can laugh about it. Say, yeah, you better watch it. I'm a little crazy, maybe a lot. So she gave me that. She gave me the realization that you can't, rescue, save, and fix everybody. Not everybody wants to be that. You're not the right person to do it in a lot of cases. But that's okay. There's plenty of people that you can share. You got a wealth of wisdom that I had before all this happened, which also helped me get through it. Hi, listen, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're here to make a public service announcement. If you're enjoying this conversation, which I know you are, right? Because if you say no, you probably lie about other things too, right? So if you're enjoying this, which I really do hope that you are, please take a moment to follow or hit the subscribe button and the like button so you never miss an episode. Let's get back to the conversation, right? Because these are all things that I've taught other people how to get through these things, and now I had to use them myself, which is different, right? It's different. So, like I said, I didn't write the book because I had all my shit together. I wrote it because I experienced it. And from that experience, I've learned so much, right?
Yeah.
So now I have boundaries. Well, different boundaries. My boundaries then didn't really exist because I was all about my partner. I was all about the person I was with, not just with Tomas, but even before. So I kept giving up my identity and who I was to be in these relationships, which is why I went through 4 marriages before I met Tomas, right? And I'm not sure what the record is, but I was going to attempt it. Anyway, 4 marriages, people say 4 marriages, Steve. That's a little crazy. 4 Are you sure it's 4? Yeah, pretty sure, right? Let me just double check. Yeah, it's 4. So they go, well, what was wrong with all these women, And I go, well, let me tell you. I would say, it's just a matter of mathematics. What? Mathematics? Yeah. Here's the deal. 4 marriages. And throughout all 4 of those marriages, there's only one constant. Me. So I must be the problem, right? Simple math, right? You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that. And then I realized, I'm not saying they were perfect or I was perfect, but I created that. I created it. So sometimes people set themselves up to fail. Why? Because they don't want it to be successful. It's not what they really want. What do I mean by that? Well, people ask me now and say, would you get married again? I said, well, I'm not saying I couldn't find someone that would be stupid enough to marry me, but I'm unmarriageable. And they go, what do you mean unmarriageable? You can't marry me. It's never going to work, right? And they say, why? Because I don't want to be. I've never wanted to be. I got married because society said that's what you're supposed to do. I'm not saying I didn't want to be with anybody, but marriage is too confining for me. Even my birth sign, which is Aquarius, we don't like to be trapped. We want our freedom, right? Is the most important to us. And this is what I used to find in relationships. And I'm not saying this is by any stretch of the means is for everybody. It totally isn't. But what I've come to realize is this. In my experience in relationships, right? I know you're dying to know this, right? You're like, make sure I learn this so I never do it. Good point, right? So and I never want to be with a guy who believes this because that would be a nightmare. But anyway, so I've said to myself, look, I am unmarriageable, and it sounds funny, and it is a new word, but it's true. And I never wanted to be married. So I would set it up to fail. But my point is this, for me, I'm not saying that I wouldn't want to be in a relationship at some point. Definitely not now. I've been single now for almost 4 years, and I tell people I'm happily single. I'm not saying I wouldn't date anybody again. I wouldn't say I wouldn't have a girlfriend again, but it would be different. I would never get married, obviously. I think I've given that a good enough shot. But I don't want to, and I've lived with a lot of women as well. I didn't marry them all. Actually, statistically speaking, I only married a very small percentage. But anyway, so on a percentage level, it wasn't that bad. But here's my point. I don't want to live with anybody. I love my freedom in my home. I don't want anybody, get the fuck out of my house. You know what I mean? I live here. Well, you can't do that. What? You know, and you didn't put the toothpaste top on. I didn't want to put the toothpaste top on. I don't like it, and I like it to, I like the toothpaste to breathe like a fine wine, right? Or whatever, you know what I mean? So I don't want my freedom to be encroached on. So if I do meet someone, and I used to say this, I remember all the relationships I've got into. I've always said at the beginning, because it's fantastic at the beginning, right? If you can remember that far back to your beginning, because you started when you were about 12.
Like the honeymoon phase. Yeah,
the honeymoon phase, right? It's the best, right? And I say, look, we got to keep it this way. And they'd always say, you can't, it's not realistic. I'd say, fuck realistic. Let's do what's unrealistic. The reasonable person adapts themselves to the world. The unreasonable one expects the world to adapt to them. Let's be unreasonable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because then what would happen is you start to take each other for granted. And that hurts, right? It does. It hurts you, right? And then you're thinking about them. Who the fuck do they think they are, right? You don't think I'm important? Try it without me. Like that movie with Tom Cruise and Cameron Diaz, right? Where they're on a motorbike going through town, and she's complaining. And finally, he stops the bike, looks back at her, and says, "Listen, with me, without me." With me, without me, you choose, right? She goes, okay, with you, okay, all right. So I just got like to the point where I'm not going to be with someone who doesn't appreciate me, right? Now the honeymoon is over, and then it's only going to go down from there. It's only going to spiral down from there. So I don't want to be in that situation. If I'm going to be in a relationship, I want the honeymoon period to last. Which means she can live outside in the doghouse, which means we can live in our own homes, right? I can live in my house. You can live in your house. We can call each other once a week.
Once a week.
We can go out on dates.
Talk to the phone for an hour.
That's right, yeah. We can sit and talk on the phone having a cup of coffee. We're not going to get into any trouble doing that, right? So you go on dates, you go on adventures, you go on trips together, and you're keeping that honeymoon period alive, right? You don't see each other all the time. When you get together, you got lots to talk about.
Yeah.
Whereas when you live together every day, what starts to happen? What did you do? Nothing.
Yeah, you're gonna see each other flaws, actually.
Get bored, right?
Yeah.
Nothing to say to each other, and then you're walking around the house like strangers.
You
know. And you talk through each other or around each other. And then you start to put each other down. And then you start to put each other down to your friends. And that's just a quagmire of negativity. It's never going to get to a good place. Now, some people say, oh, I'm not like that with my husband, or I'm not like that with my wife. And I go, yeah, I believe you. And you probably lie about other things too, right? But, what I see is people pretending that it's all perfect. And it really isn't, right? And the thing that I think about that, Emmy, is, and I don't know where I got this image in my mind, but it is an image in my mind that I have about people. Most people in the world we live in is they come home from work, they've got the right car, the right house, in the right neighborhood, and they come home and they wave to the neighbors, and the neighbors are doing the same thing. They're in debt up to their neck, right?
Mm-hmm.
They walk in the front door and they close it and they put the back against the front door and they go, oh, thank God I don't have to pretend anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a heavy burden to take, right? And I don't want to live that way.
Exactly.
If I live on my own and I shop at Walmart, it's fine.
Yeah.
I don't have to keep up appearances, right? I can
Your
just do,
mask.
and there's nothing wrong with Walmart. Anyway, so I'm doing what I'm doing, and I don't have to live up to somebody else's expectation of me, right? Um,
Yeah.
so, and I know how that can sound, maybe even narcissistic, selfish or narcissistic, and I'm okay with that. Whatever it sounds like, it's what's right for me. Does that make sense? Because I don't want to live a life that society says I have to lead, right? Now,
Yeah.
for you, marriage could be the perfect thing. Maybe. But anyway, no matter what, you got to try things, right? And I gave it a good shot. Don't you agree?
Yeah.
4 marriages, 1 lifetime. That's without the rest of the craziness, right? So I was always in a relationship, right? Always. As I left one, I was going into another or whatever, or I went into another in a very short period of time. And obviously I got something out of it, right? It's not just sex. That was a big problem. But anyway, you get something out of it, right? Until you don't anymore, until you go, you know what? There's definitely upside. There were definitely upsides about being married, but the downsides outweighed the upsides for me. Like I was making that decision with Tomas for a long time. The upsides were greater than the downsides for a long time until they weren't anymore, right? The downsides were a lot worse, and I was exhausted, and I was actually sucking air, right, for my life. So these are all kinds of things that she helped me come to terms with and realize about myself, right? And be okay with it. And also to no longer give myself away to be with somebody else.
Yeah.
To stop doing the things that are important to me. And I would do that in most of my relationships. I've got a pretty strong mission, vision, and purpose. As you know, I've got a lot of huge vision of what we're going to do. And when I meet someone, often that stuff just goes out the window. And I'm not going to let that happen again. I'm not going to give all that up to be with somebody. So that's a new boundary, right? That's realizing that I need to do that for myself. And if they don't like it, then they're not the right person for me. And that I've got to make sure that I don't let anybody take all my space, right? And it's funny because that used to show up. This is a kind of a funny way to say this, but I've always liked the big bed, right? But whenever I'm in a relationship, I don't know, you could probably tell me. I don't know if there's a woman thing or whatever, but you fucking take all the bed. There's nothing left. I used to be in the fucking corner of a king size bed. I'm almost falling out of bed. And she's like, I'm like, I don't want to put up with that again. I want to have a nice bed and I want to be able to freaking enjoy a nice bed, right? You can
Yeah.
come over, we can fuck each other's brains out, but you're going home. You're not staying in my bed. So these are funny things. I make it funny, but these are things that are important to me, right? I want to go to bed when I want, because you text me or call me at all times of the freaking day and night. I'm usually awake, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually.
I don't sleep much, right? So but I'll go to bed early, and I go to bed at a time sometimes. What do you mean you're going to fucking bed? You just got up, right? It's early, right? But I'll get up at 3, 4, or 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'll be doing all kinds of shit around the house. And they're not going to like that. They're going to go, "What are you doing?" And then now I'm going to lie in bed for 3 hours until what people call a normal time to get up.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not doing that. I want to get up. I'm getting up. I want to go to bed. I'm going to go to bed. Whatever it is, right? I want to get myself a drink. I'm going to get myself a drink, right? You don't have to get it for me. I'm going to get it myself.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that, right? So many things that became more apparent as a result of having this absolutely 100% crazy bitch in my life. And I loved her, and I still love her. I would never be with her again because I value my life. But it was an amazing time in my life. And I say this throughout the book, it's the Charles Dickens quote. They were the best of times. They were the worst of times, right? We had the time of our lives, right? We really did. But that's my past. I'm not that same person anymore. And so going through this experience, which I call what I went through, the dark night of the soul, to become aware of all these things so that I could change the way I live, right? So I'm very grateful to her, extremely grateful. that she came into my life as a master teacher. She never came into it to really be my wife or be my forever, that's not why she was here. And I had to come to terms with that, right? So, but she also made a huge sacrifice to be here with me. What do I mean? Well, my belief is that we are not humans having a spiritual experience. We're actually spirits having a human experience. And so I read a book a long time ago now. It's by Neil Donald Walsh. If anybody wants to get it, it's an amazing book. It's actually a book written for children. It's called The Little Soul in the Sun. So you want to hear it?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we're going to hear it anyway. So anyway, this little soul in the heaven, right, goes up to God and says, "Hey, God, I think I know who I am."
Oh,
God says, "You do?" He goes, "Yeah." And God says, "Well, who are you?" The little soul says, "I am the light." And God says, "Yeah, that's right." And so the little soul says, "Well, I'd like to experience something I'm not. Is that possible?" And God says, "Well, you could experience darkness." The little soul says, "Darkness? What is darkness?" And God said, "It's that which you are not." "Will I be afraid?" "Only if you choose to be." But see, there's many things that you can experience that you are not.
yeah.
The little soul says, "Okay, all right, well, could I experience forgiveness?" God says, "Oh, yeah. Would that be a good thing to experience?" God says, "Oh, yeah, that'd be good." The little soul says, "Awesome." So God says, "There's just one problem." The little soul says, "Problem? God, you fix it," right? God says, "The problem is there's nothing or nobody to forgive." Now the little soul discovers what it's like to feel sadness. So just as the little soul was feeling sad, another little soul that was listening to this little soul having a conversation with God raised its hand and said, "I will do something for you to forgive me for." And this little soul says, "You would? But why would you do that? You're a perfect point of light.
Yeah.
Why would you slow your vibration down to such a low level that you would do something to smite me and to hurt me?" And the other little soul said, "Because I love you. Don't you remember, you and I, we've done this many times before. We've been the up and the down of it, the left and the right of it, the right and the wrong with it. Oh, yes, we've done this many, many times before. But all I ask, when I do this thing, when I smite you, when I hurt you, that you remember who I really am." And the little soul says, "Of course, no problem. Let's go," right? So they run off down to earth to have this experience. And as they're leaving, God calls after them, "Always remember, I have sent you nothing but angels." So if you can remember that, you're taking stuff pretty quick. But if you can't, get the book. But anyway, either way, what if you remembered that, right? When someone does something and you go, "That bitch, she did this to me. That asshole, he did that to me." And you remember, God has sent you nothing but angels.
Yeah.
And they've come into your life to do that, not to you, but for you.
For you.
Not easy, right? Not easy. And just to give an example from the book, right? So we're in this tumultuous relationship. I don't even know how many times we broke up. I don't know if you kept count. It's hard to keep count, right? So we break up and have arguments, usually not very long, right? Because she would always come chasing after me. I'm kidding. But anyway, we would get back together again, right? But anyway, in this situation, and I'm traveling 4 days a week, and God knows what she's doing, but she's a hooligan, right? So she's gone off on a binge somewhere, stolen my car. I think she went to a casino for 5 days, and God knows who paid for that. Anyway, she's gone. I'm on a trip And she left the house and made sure she left some windows open so she could get in when I was gone, right? But I found them. I found the windows are open and I closed all the windows. So she came back to the house when she knew I wasn't there and she tried to get in and she couldn't get in. So most people at that point would go, son of a bitch, I'll read the riot act when he gets back. Not her. She breaks in the freaking house, right? Smashes the window, gets in the house. All the alarms go off, right? Police come by really hot, right? It's late at night. I don't know how many cars. I think it's like 4 squad cars, 2 SUVs, and they came out with the dogs and let the dogs going out all through the gardens. It was chaos, which is pretty normal for her. Anyway, so this chaos is going on. So all these sheriffs are there, of course, and she's fucking stunning, right? So they're all around her car. Oh yeah, no problem. We'll get you in the house, right? So they call me. Yeah, we're here at the house. I think they said she's back or something. And I go, yeah, okay. Well, listen, whatever you do, do not let her in that house. Under no circumstances, let her in that house, right? I'll call you back, right? Now, they've been out to the this is how crazy. They've been out to the house a bunch of times, as you know, right? For all kinds of stupid stuff. She's going to get me arrested, all kinds of stuff, right? So they called me back and they said, yeah, well, we have been here a number of times already. It's obvious she's living here, right? So I talked to the chief. They called the chief of police, right? I spoke to the chief and he said we need to let her in. I'm like, no, you can't let her in. And they put the phone down. So now I'm away for 4 days and I'm thinking about all the things he's going to do to that house. He is going to fucking destroy it, right? So I get back and of course she's gone, right? She's not going to be there when I get back, right? So I go in the house. Everything looks fine, right? I'm like, wow, maybe she's turned over a new leaf. Not believing that for a second, but I go in the kitchen and I put on the kettle. So I have a cup of tea is what we English do when we're a little stressed, right? Have a cup of tea. Everything. So I put the kettle on. I go out of the kitchen, do a couple of things, come back. Kettle hasn't boiled, right? So I go over to the kettle, look around, and I look at the back, and she snipped fucking power cord, right?
Yeah.
Now, I know as soon as I see that, there's no way that's the only power cord that she snipped, right? I mean, what's the point, right? So I go and I look at every single electrical appliance in the house, upstairs, downstairs, bedrooms, everywhere. She's cut every fucking cord in the house, right? And I said, I always said I never wanted to hurt Tamaz. I did, however, want to kill her, right? So then I'm thinking, okay, there's no way this ends here. There's no way, right? So when I was a kid, and I talk about this in the book, my mom used to send me to school in school clothes that were way too big for me. My Parker overcoat would still fit me to this. I swear to God, it would fit me. And so, you know how kids are when you look stupid, they're going to tell you're stupid, right? I mean, the Parker overcoat dragged on the floor. I had to roll up my sleeves to see my hands. And the hood came down in front with the fur around it. I looked like the Grim Reaper, right? This little coat is floating along the ground. You can't see anything in it, right? Anyway, of course, the kids were merciless, right? Even the teachers. So what's the point? The point is I had to, because my mom wasn't going to buy me new clothes, right? So I had to find a way to be able to buy my own school clothes. And so clothes became very important to me. I always wanted to look immaculate so nobody could laugh at me. Well, this carried on through my life. And at this time now, I'm making a small fortune every year. So I had a wardrobe to die for, right? As you can imagine, right? So what am I thinking now? Oh my God, no. So I'll go to the closet, right? And then I look in there and it's like, everything looks fine. Everything looks normal.
Yeah.
So I walk in there and I pull the clothes back and she's cut the lapels, the pocket, the bottom of the jacket, everything, every fucking thing in that wardrobe, right? And then she's taken the shoes out and she's cut the back down the heel and down the, I mean, it must have taken her hours to do this, right?
Yeah.
About where she made the cuts, right? And she was probably thinking evil things. That fucking son of a bitch. You love me.
Oh, no.
What's going to happen to you, right? So some time ago, and I should have pre-framed this, I should have said, I adopted a belief that nothing happens to you, everything happens for you, right? And I'm pretty good at it. But I'm not going to try and tell you that when I found my wardrobe like that, that I suddenly went, oh, yeah, that's happened for me, right? I didn't do that, right? So, so I'm pissed. I'm so mad, right? Like I said, I didn't want to hurt her, but I wanted to kill her. So, but the good thing, and this is another good lesson about emotions, right? Every emotion is valid and there's a reason for it, right? Even anger, that if you express it to its full, you'll come back to peace. Kind of like crying, right? If you cry, you just let it out. Eventually you calm down and you're fine and you just move on. It's when you try and suppress it, it becomes a problem. Right? So let's just say, because I was on my own, I let my anger out, right?
Yeah.
But eventually, like, I don't know, 24 hours or so later, I'm exhausted from being angry. I can't be angry anymore. So I sat down, slumped down in the armchair, looking out over the lake, and I go, okay, this happened for me. Yeah, okay, well, this is going to be good. Explain that one to me, right? So you go through a process. It doesn't come for you right away. So the first thing that came into my head, well, I guess it's only clothes, right? You can replace clothes. And my mind's going, yeah, but they were fucking nice clothes, man. You can't just, I'm like, okay, I got to go deeper. So then I go, oh, wow. Attachment. I was attached to those clothes. The reason the emotion was so strong was because there was a strong attachment to them, right?
Yeah.
And I went, that was just the beginning. Because then I had to think about all the other things I was attached to. The house, the cars, all these material things that had become part of my identity without me even realizing it was happening, right? And so that began the process of me letting it all go, including Tamaz. You know, people say, well, did you lose everything because of Tamaz? No, she never took anything from me mystically. She didn't really care, right? I mean, her father's a fucking billionaire. She cared about money. She would just be nice to him, right? And she couldn't be nice to him to save her life because of the anger she had towards him, which then she projected onto me and other men. And so she was all about taking men down, right? That's what she wanted to do. She wanted to win. She wanted to beat men to show that she was capable, intelligent enough, and she could be successful. No way. And she'd been doing that, as we found out a lot later, right? She'd been doing that for 20 years. 20 years. She'd been meeting, dating men, and then devouring them. Venus flytrap, right? I just happened to be a fly that got away, right?
Yeah.
Most of the flies got devoured, right? So anyway, these are all things that happened, and by adopting that belief. So sometimes people say, what's one of the things you want me to take away from this experience today? Just remember that nothing happens to you, everything happens for you. If you will adopt that belief, you can no longer be a victim to anyone or anything. If you're committed to that belief, you'll always find the silver lining. You'll always find the lesson because there's always one there. If you don't, you'll always be a victim. And that's just an endless cycle. And then things will happen to you in your mind. And you'll feel like it's happened to you. Therefore, you're a victim. And you just repeat the same pattern. But if you commit to that belief, you will always, without question. And I know there's a lot of women feeling, you don't understand, you're a man, you don't know what can happen to a woman. Yes, I do. Right? Because I've helped people through all kinds of terrible, traumatic things that have happened to them. And I'm not saying that I would immediately start out in therapy going, don't worry about it. It happened for you. Call me in a couple of weeks. Eat a few apples. You'll be fine. No, it can be a very lengthy process, right? Of helping people.
Yeah.
But I can because I have had experience of it and I know it's possible. I can't guarantee you I will because you've got to participate. You have to be open to that possibility. But I promise you, if you're open to that possibility, we'll find a way out of the trap that you won't continue to be a victim no matter what anybody's done to you. They did it for you. As a soul, like in the story, the little soul in the sun, they came down here to do that for you. That might be a huge challenge for you, but you chose it. And if you take responsibility and accountability for that, I promise you a better life. That's what I can be sure of. If you think you might be in a toxic relationship, or if you know you're in a toxic relationship, we can help. There is a free, a guide of the 7 signs that you might be in a toxic relationship. You can get the first 3 chapters of the book. You could spend some time with me in a counseling session, complimentary, to see if there's something that we can work on together, if you feel comfortable with that, and we can take it from there. So remember, nothing happens to you, everything happens for you. We'll see you next time.
Let's go. Spiritual sparkle in a world of gray, finding the truth in the disarray. It's a raw confession of a life lived fast, breaking the chains of a heavy past, from the erotic spirit to the soul's rebirth, finding what a human life is really worth. Sex, lies, and the repercussions stay as we dance the final act away. Just a true story of a love so deep, promises that we could never keep. In the garden of the trap we lay, waiting for the break of a brand